if you drive a 2015 and up Mustang with an automatic transmission, there's an important way that you need to drive the car. Makes it way more fun to drive. If you don't drive like this, you're not going to have as much fun. You're going to feel like the transmission doesn't shift that well. You're probably going to say the automatic transmission in the Mustang isn't that good. So in this video, I'm going to show you that one simple trick and just kind of talk about how it feels when you change the driving style, the transmission, and what you need to do to kind of get into that setting. And I've been driving for a long time and I somehow just didn't know this, and they should tell you this. It should be more known, I think. So let's take a look at it. This is a 2021 Mustang Mach 1 with the handling package and the automatic 10-speed. So normally you just put the car in drive, right? If you want to completely change the way the car feels as far as responsiveness, you have to put the car in S. I've been driving manual transmission so long that I didn't know that you need to put this down into S. So I just thought S was for paddles only, for manually shifting the car. That's not it at all. This is sport mode. If you don't drive the car in sport mode, it's not gonna feel sporty. I rented a Mustang convertible GT with a 10-speed automatic. I didn't drive it in sport one time, I don't think. I thought driving in sport was just for manual shifting, but it's not at all. So I'm gonna show you. We've got it in drive. I'm gonna put the exhaust into a louder mode. Let's go to, let's say sport, just so you can, let's just go to track so you can hear the exhaust, so you can hear the car shifting better. So we're in drive, regular mode. It skips to third gear, fourth, fifth. And as I give it throttle, it's not really shifting. It holds the gear. Instead of downshifting when I apply throttle, let's say to merge on the interstate here, it doesn't really, it's not wanting to downshift for me. It's not as responsive. So if someone just drove it in this setting, you might think, the transmission's not that good. It's fine, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not great. All right guys, so we're on the interstate. We're in D for drive. I've been driving Mustangs a long time, specifically manual Mustangs. If you've been driving a manual Mustang and you come over to drive an automatic transmission Mustang, you might not be aware that in order to get the transmission to be responsive, you need to drive it in sport mode. And a lot of people think that sport mode is just right here. Actually, if you just take the shifter and you go from D down into S, it already downshifted. Did you see that? As soon as I put it into S, it downshifted. Now, if I had this car into D, it's not gonna be as responsive. Watch. It goes back into 10th gear. I'm gonna give it a little bit of throttle. It actually stays in 10th gear. I'm gonna give it that same amount of throttle. It goes down to 7th, okay? And it immediately went from 9 to 7. If you're used to driving a manual transmission car, you might not know that to get the full responsiveness out of the automatic 10-speed is you need to drive it in sport mode. It's actually called sport mode. I thought driving down into S was for manual shifting only. And I'm a Mustang guy, you know, like a lot of you guys are, who've driven manual transmissions your whole life, so you don't know. And a lot of people, I think, are gonna get into these automatic cars and not know, to make the transmission feel more responsive, you're gonna need to pull the car down into S, sport mode. So watch, if I want to accelerate, I'm in 10th, if I want to accelerate, I can just step on the gas a little bit more, and it's not gonna downshift, right? It's just gonna stay in the top gear. It's for fuel efficiency. It's so the transmission doesn't jump around that much. I don't even drive the car anymore unless it's down into S, to be honest. Maybe if I'm on a road trip and I wanna get a little bit better gas mileage, but honestly, I can, it just, when you pull the car down into S, it just makes it so much more sensitive. Any slight input into the throttle, it will downshift into the gear that you want it to be into. All you have to do is just give it a little bit of throttle. That's all you have to do. So the car feels directly connected to your foot, opposed to when the car's in D, the car doesn't feel connected to you at all. Look, I'm gonna put it back into D. It's gonna go right into 10th gear. There it goes, overdrive. And I'm still accelerating. So if you want your car, if you want your Mustang to feel sporty, you have to drive it in sport mode, but nobody's gonna tell you that you have to pull the shifter down into S, and that's gonna make it so much more responsive. Specifically in the Mach 1, if you don't want the track suspension to be turned on or the sport suspension to be turned on, then you drive it in normal mode and then you just pull it down into S, and that's gonna be where you wanna drive if you want responsiveness. So there is actually a sport setting that's not in your driving mode, and because the driving mode just goes to Sport Plus. So if you want to go from normal mode to sport, you just pull it down into sport, that's it. But it's not on the selector. Keeps your dampers in normal, but your throttle responsiveness, your transmission in sport. What feels better is when you give it partial throttle and the car downshifts for you. The car knows what gear you want to be in exactly. If you have it in D, it's not going to do that. It's basically going to stay in the upper gear and stay in the top gear for better fuel economy. You'll give it gas and it won't downshift. You'll want to smash the gas. It's just not responsive. So thousands of people have rented Mustangs with the automatic transmission all over the world, but they just didn't know to put it down into sport mode. Of course, it's gonna not feel that good, the automatic transmission. If you don't drive it in sport, it's just gonna drive like a normal car. And then when you go to give it gas, it's gonna hesitate and it's not gonna downshift. It's not gonna be in the right gear when you want it to. Basically, the car will not kick down into the gear that you want it to unless you give it a lot of throttle when you're in drive. If you drive the car in S, it will immediately kick down into the gear that you want as soon as you breathe on the throttle. So it actually increases the throttle response. So the throttle is way more sensitive, and as you barely touch the throttle, it downshifts, it kicks down into the gear that you want it to. Like, it's already up into fourth. If I just give it a little throttle, it kicks down exactly where you want it to be, and then it hangs into that gear. Look at that. That's way more fun than just driving in D. Driving in D is no fun compared to this. Why would you ever drive in drive? I literally rented a Mustang convertible with an exhaust, intake, and tune, and I went around and drove it in D and thought that it was really good. If you don't know any better, that's what you do. So hopefully this helps people enjoy their Mustangs as they go and get them from the rental, as they go test drive them. If you don't put the transmission in the car into sport or Sport Plus, it's not going to drive responsively. It's not going to be as fun. I mean, this increases how much fun it is by at least 50%. So don't be the guy that doesn't like the automatic transmission because it's in D and you didn't know any better, and you put it down into S and you go, oh, this car is responsive, fast, this transmission holds the gears, it feels good, it drives good, you know, it's sensitive to the throttle inputs. That's exactly how you want it to be, but nobody tells you, and that's probably how it should be from the factory. I feel like D mode should actually be economy mode, if anything, because that's how it feels. The throttle responsiveness in D is almost like economy. We're in D now, aka economy mode, and the throttle sensitivity is way decreased. It's still a lot better than the manual transmissions though. I'll tell you that much. After driving my 2015 GT performance package for 7 years, the throttle responsiveness on this car is a lot better. If you're used to driving manual transmission cars, you're not used to having to put the car into sport mode to get it to drive good. So hopefully this helps people that go to like Enterprise here and rent a Mustang and they think, the automatic, the Mustang wasn't that fun. Well, maybe it wasn't that fun because you didn't have it in sport mode, and drive mode makes it feel just like a slush box, basically. Put it down into S and have some fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't be the guy that's driving around in drive instead of sport thinking that the car doesn't feel that good, because of course it doesn't. You're basically driving in economy mode. Put the car down in S, drive it like it's meant to be, and really enjoy that transmission and how it's supposed to be driven. And if you really want to have some fun, guys, click it up into Sport Plus. This thing is a riot. If If you don't have these where you can pull it into Sport Plus, you literally just pull it down into Sport. Your dampers, if you have those, will not go into Sport, and the transmission and the tune will. So this is just an easy way to drive the car how it should be. I think the drive mode is actually the economy mode, and the sport mode is actually just how the car should be driven, because it's a Mustang, right? It's a V8. It should be driven sporty. So that's my take on how to drive the automatic, and everyone should know that. And there's thousands and thousands of people that just drove it and drive and didn't feel like it was anything special. And you should drive the car down into S, and it will feel special. It'll be really fun to drive. It will change, especially if it's the 10-speed automatic. It changes everything up. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit the subscribe button if you'd like to stay updated with the latest Mustang automotive news. Catch you in the next video.